How you doing? Yeah, this is
Hey
my
man, how are
friend,
you?
and yeah, good, good, good. My intention for this is essentially gathering and having almost like a fireside chat, a normal conversation about technologies that influence our life and how we see secondary effects that are not visible to to us normally. We know that like dire consequences are not usually evident and not seen through our eyes normally. It's usually disguised. As robots start seeing things, our memories are getting affected and possibly even reduced. I've got a very good example of saying how two distinct systems are actually connected together. One is the Amazon rainforest, and the other is Sahara Desert. There's a very good Netflix series called Connected on basically saying how these two systems are actually connected together. If you basically get rid of one system that that's part of this coupling, this system won't exist. And I'm not going to dive deeper into this. I know you haven't watched the series yet, so I'm not going to spoil it for you. And anyone who's not watched it, I would recommend to watch it. But diving deeper into this is what we are possibly having this conversation and series about.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like the thing you kicked off with was the concept of second order impacts. Like if you've looked up any like in like basically philosophy kind of world, um, there's this domino effect where often it's not the first order impact, but the second order impact that makes the bigger difference. And you'll see this in business development. You'll see this in software engineering. It's not necessarily the code you wrote, but it's how that code affects the next system, which affects the third system, and then the fourth system down the line. So, kind of applying that same mental model to how does computer vision, robotics, and the latest developments in AI, how does that affect us in the real world? It's interesting to apply it in that manner.
Yeah, definitely. Like consider examples of where this vision is existing in the robotics and AI space now. So you have smart cameras everywhere. You have autonomous cars everywhere. You have AMRs, which is basically like autonomous robots across all warehouses doing smart things.
Obviously, robotics goes other places where humans don't usually go as
Yep.
much. I mean, you and I have both worked on some stuff that was with, uh, you know, aerial robotics that goes into
Mhm.
kind of dangerous places.
Yep.
Some things that I've worked on before is like underwater robotics. I know you've done
Yep.
some work with some maritime robotics as well. Um, so yes, that's a field in which robotics is kind of extending the reach of like human potential, but again, that's not the day to day life of what we experience, right? So, like, I guess in this conversation, it'll be interesting to look more at that everyday impact of rather than how do we extend the boundaries of human potential. It's how are we transforming the general core of human potential. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, very curious to see what you think about that.
Yeah. All the examples that we have cited actually use vision-based systems that currently businesses are leveraging off of not actually decision level impacts, but it gives you those sort of um, risks that are associated with certain operations that you're performing for use case. But then it's always this human who's guided by those insights and will have to take a decision on. So it's definitely already there,
Mm.
is what I'm trying to say. And the level of impact that it is sort of pointing at us is directly influenced by the technology and where it's applied and what it's like perceiving around us. And it's pretty certainly influencing our scope of thinking in terms of what decision we will need to make.
Before we dive into that, do you think that there's a lower barrier now to accepting vision systems in different workplaces, like in warehouses and manufacturing plants and things like that? Like you rewind even 10 years, there was a lot of apprehension before some of the more like we call them conventional now, but convolutional nets and deep learning was really only 10, 15 years ago that it started becoming applicable in reality.
Yep.
You still saw even 10 years ago, I remember seeing on manufacturing plants resistance to bringing those systems in. And they were held to such a high standard, so much higher than even human performance was held to. So I'm curious if you think that overall, has our barrier to accepting computer vision as a part of our systems in day-to-day life, has that barrier reduced? Is that a more common thing that we're just regularly accepting as a part of life now?
I would say so, yes. Like all the big companies have started to adopting this. So like
Mm.
AI and deep learning platforms, even though they are very new, like 10 to 15 years, it's pretty new for like production level businesses to be applied on field, right? The it all boils down to trust. Space businesses. So they have been old school for quite a long amount of time. But right now, like most of the latest lunar-based rovers that have been sent out, whether it's being done on the rover or there are mission control softwares that are being run on ground systems that uses AI, that uses vision-based
Mm.
navigation, and across lots of flagship missions. So bottom line is that if the ins and outs are transparent enough, if we can basically have that level of confidence, then businesses are more likely to accept it.
Your contention is how deterministic a system is what's driving. Is it the determinism or is it the transparency? Because there's two things, right? Like with the computer vision models that we had 10 years ago and even 8 years ago, there were initially a lot of questions around, oh, how is it transparent? How do I know what it's seeing, right? And there was a lot of work done around like understanding what part of a neural network is learning what kind of information, right? So there was a lot of research and work done in that, but I don't think we actually ever fully solved, you know,
No.
that the transparency problem of knowing what.
It goes into that analogy where do you know how your microwave works, right? You don't have to know how your microwave works. You just
Mm.
heat it up and it gives things for you.
Right. So if we've abstracted it enough to the point that we can observe reliable output, whether or not that output is deterministic, we're willing to accept it more.
Yes. I believe
Is that
the,
is that a reasonable statement?
yeah, I believe like ChatGPT by OpenAI is like a primary example. It's not about like the packaging that they did. It's not about the interface, is what I feel. It's about a microwave movement for AI, where whatever, like it's abstracted away the users and in terms of what answers they're getting. So you can have like a child, you can have like a student, you can have like a PhD grad, you can have like a networking engineer, roboticist. You can even have like an old man interacting with that system. It's gonna give you an answer that's gonna satisfy you, and that's the level
Yeah.
of
Yeah. So the ease of.
yeah, that's the level of trust that we need to have with vision-based systems nowadays.
Yeah, so the ease of use and how visible the general reliability is of the system, I think that's the biggest thing. Is our systems reliable enough that we can work with them as people and trust them enough and kind of understand their boundaries? We don't need to understand how they function under the hood, but we understand kind of its boundaries, right? Take parking sensors, for example, right?
Hmm.
We have some understanding. Like, I mean, I don't know how many people are going to really know whether it's the camera that's doing the distance measurement or whether it's the sonar ping sensors in the back, right? Like, most people don't know that. They just know that the car has lines and the lines I can kind of rely on as a distance measure
Yep,
to where I'm parking. And
yep.
also, the same thing with the beeping. I just know how, depending on how alarming the beeping sounds, I can park accordingly. So
I think your intention when
it's
you're
the same kind
parking
of
the car is
analogy.
not to hit anything outside, right? And you trust the system.
Right. So your threat is very well established, right? The same thing gets much more complicated once you go into uh, much more open world problems, right? In a
Yep,
parking system, it's kind of closed world. You've got your spot where you're parking and the areas that you don't want to hit.
yep.
You've limited the threat vectors in a big way.
So we as a company, as a person, we have started outsourcing our vision, and then as process of doing so, we start losing attention. And once we start losing attention, our memory takes an effect. How much of a memory we get affected we lose our perception about certain things. And even for me, right? If in a futuristic sense, like if I'm given um, an an hypothetical camera or a helmet that I wear in my head, I'm gonna keep walking. Uh, I trust whatever it needs to. I go into a zebra crossing zone, and I can see literally a car on the left and the right that are coming at a very rapid pace. I know in my sense that I shouldn't cross, but the system says for me to cross. In such scenarios,
Mm.
I'm not sure what you'll do, but I have a question mark in my head in terms of what I'll need to do.
Yeah, I think it's going to vary a lot depending on the risk factor, right? Like if it's me crossing the road, there's always going to be enough of a threat that if I don't check this properly, I'm going to get run over, right? But if we take this into a much lower personal risk scenario, right? Take your day-to-day job, right? Like now we're throwing Claude code and all sorts of coding agents at our software. Can I honestly say that I know the code in as much detail as if I wrote it myself?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Not not really. To be
yeah,
very honest, not really,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
100%.
we're reaching this level of abstraction on top of our code that's doing that. So it's the same thing as walking out into a zebra crossing. It's just the impacts aren't necessarily felt right now. They're felt when we're
Yeah,
trying to do some maintenance down the track. And
yes.
something I was listening to yesterday, we're kind of relying on the fact that the AI coding models of the future are going to be good enough to help us look into that problem without having to deeply learn everything again. So we're hoping that the abstraction layer can survive its own abstraction, essentially. And I'm curious, this probably translates into a lot of other fields. Like I'm very curious if lawyers who are drafting like even boilerplate, what's it called, boilerplate contracts. I saw a contract a couple of weeks ago, and there were 10 or 12 different typographical errors in there, including an individual's name, for example, right? Now, things like this in a detailed, I mean, do we just accept that as this is how it's going to be, and how much more detail? And that requires a person reading into it every single letter of the contract. Now, if we're generating things, whether it's a contract or whether it's a piece of content for social media or whether it's a presentation at work, I may be able to deliver it in that moment, but I think the how much we retain of that presentation of that particular piece of work is going to reduce compared to back when we would take a few days to put together a really solid presentation. So in terms of what you were talking about right at the start, is how does this affect our memory? I can see a lot of people, the rate at which we produce things is increasing, but that means that the time we spend digesting the things that we're producing as we're producing them reduces. So that memory
Mm-hmm.
reduces. I've seen a lot of musicians and videographers, and I'm sure you've seen this when you're content editing, is when you're editing something at depth, you notice every single little flaw in the video. You notice every single little flaw in the flow of speech and the audio. Like anytime I make a mistake in music, I can find it and I know exactly where it is. It's because I've been over that area. I've reviewed that bit so many times in the
Yep.
production of that video. Now, anyone else who's just watching it would probably watch it, not even notice that there was something wrong. Now,
Hmm.
that's because the more time you spend with something, naturally, the more you'll retain of it. So where my brain goes with this is when we're talking about AI taking over white collar jobs entirely, right? Or AI assisting white collar jobs in such a way that we can produce output. I think the value of that output is going to be more and more short lived. Because if you think about it, like a report informs, why do we write a report or a presentation? We have a chart or a report or a presentation to inform some decision that the business needs to make. Now, the more ephemeral that root information is, the sooner you're going to let go of that information and not make decisions on that basis, right? So I think yes, we're speeding up the production of
Yeah.
this output, but we're also reducing the longevity of the value, right? which is
Yeah.
good and bad. I'm not saying it's
Yeah.
necessarily a
Yeah.
bad thing, right? It can be a really good thing because sometimes I've seen like, you generate a report and then that is your facts and then you make all decisions based on those facts because it costs a lot of effort and money to generate that report. It's why reporting and analytics went into this whole world of dashboarding, where you're
Yeah.
getting real-time dashboards every single day, every hour, every minute,
Yeah.
and make more informed decisions and not overfit to, old data. I've started reading again a couple of months ago, but I wonder if that impacts our cognitive ability to focus for extended periods of time and focus on detail of something. Like if you just go to like an art gallery, how much of the detail are we going to notice in 30 years time compared to
Yeah.
now, right? Even if you look at cartoons, for example, cartoons when you and I were growing up in the 90s, right? You compare them to the cartoons that like kids are watching today, the colors were much more dull, right? Much more
Yeah.
faded. They're not as bright and vibrant as they are now.
Yeah.
So, and you can see the kind of the dopamine response that it's giving your brain is that it's much more stimulating now.
Yeah.
So my question is, over time, are we less and less stimulated by the actual work that we're doing, and therefore paying less attention to it? Is that going to actually affect? Are we increasing quantity and losing quality? I don't know.
Yeah.
Like that's a question mark in my mind.
Right. Like our perception about work, what we have now or what we had before about like 30 or 40 years ago has dramatically changed. And I know it's pretty much a fact that how what we perceive work will change in the future as well. Because it's not like a 9 to 5 has not been always the work that we thought how it was. It was an economic system that we kind of developed
Yeah,
so that we all um, have similar sort of framework that we all go and do.
yeah. It's the way that we've like productionized industrial output, but this era is changing entirely, right? Like we're seeing industrial output
Yeah.
is less and less equated to where you are and what hours you spend specifically.
We have already few technologies that are already been part of our life, say GPSs, where once that came in, and even now when I use the GPS, like lots of old people uh, ask me, don't you know the direction for that? It's like pretty obvious. So we have completely lost sense of navigation skills as a human. Take example of calculators. Even 1 plus 1, I'm exaggerating here, but even 1 plus 1, we immediately take our calculators and do that equal to and get the result. And even not like a physical calculator
Yeah.
now, we have digital calculators in our phones, so we don't calculate using our minds. All that said, like these things has helped us in terms of what we want to do on a higher functional level. So we want to move from point A to point B. I'm not gonna have a draft paper and then put a drafter around in terms of okay, I'm heading 2 yards this way and that way, and that's the latitude, longitude. I'm not like or I'm not gonna look at stars and celestial navigate. I know like it has all those things have
Yeah.
like credible impacts in terms of how technology was shaped into in the future, but right now in our sort of generation, we are abstracted away from all the learnings that we have, uh, like our ancestors or previous generations have gathered, and we have been given this tool. And our generation now is
Yeah.
giving the people in the future this tool in terms of shaping how they think about certain things, about performing functions.
And the other second order impact across all of these technologies is how does this impact education and the next jobs coming up?
Yeah,
And honestly, that may be a topic for a completely other time. But
yeah,
in terms of affecting memory and context and cognition, if we're getting less and less used to seeing things because we're letting vision models do a lot of the perception for us and summarizing things, at what point does that transform? If that's transforming the way we're working, then wouldn't that transform our form of education? Because we saw that
yeah,
in pre-industrial revolution where education was directed by what we wanted people to work as. We saw it post-industrial revolution where factory workers needed a certain level of literacy and numeracy, so we brought that into the school curriculum. And now we're seeing another, like, I mean, we thought internet would transform it, but it didn't really seem to transform the work culture all that much. But with a combination of post-COVID work from home and now AI tooling kind of, there's a lot of talk about disrupting. I don't know how disruptive it will be at the end of the day, but with that being disrupted, I'm curious what the second order impact is on education systems,
Yep,
and how much they're
definitely.
still valued and will be valued
Yep.
going forward.
No, 100%. Generally agree with, and also eager to see on how those effects are. Right now, we see people actually talking about AI systems that influencing us enough that we are not thinking enough. We are not thinking at all in some scenarios, or some might say. Um,
Mm.
but what I would like to say about this particular episode and the scare that I had was, in the future, when vision systems are actually very much influential in terms of what we are getting inputs from, are we allowed to
Mm.
actually see stuff? Are we allowed to see stuff that would uh, help us take decisions on? Is there going to be a switch off mode for AI for me to actually uh, look at nature and just admire it? All those things, all those insights, all those diagnostics that are coming in, I would like to
Mm.
be as human as possible. And I know that I'll probably be using AI or vision systems for work and for definitely for education. But when it comes to being human, is there sort of like a limitation that we'll have to draw?
I'm weirdly optimistic about that actually. So
Hmm.
my weird take on that is that as we abstract away the things that we maybe have been distracting ourselves with over these years, like we've been distracting ourselves with work essentially,
Yeah.
and the amount of work that we're trying to do, does that bring us back time and energy to focus on other things? Now, if I don't have to care about whether my Python code is, type hinted or not, if that's just taken care of for me, can I then spend a little bit more time thinking about music and thinking about, going out in the woods and, taking a walk kind of thing? Like, does that actually free capacity, or are we then increasing the cognitive load because we're thinking more broadly, right? Like we're getting some energy back from these abstractions. The question is where we choose to redistribute that energy and when we choose to like redeploy that resource essentially to.
The the skepticism
Mm.
comes from how us humans, not more so on the technology level. So we as humans,
Totally.
it's
100%.
it's good that we are adopting technology. So take mobile phone as examples. Like I know there has been countless things saying that the from the advent of mobile phones, we have started to use mobile phones, have been distant from like people or physical activities and whatever. Even more so with the advent of AI systems. What I'm trying to say is like with the advent of vision-based AI
Mm.
systems fully incorporated within our life style, that's where the scare comes from. I'm pretty sure, like if there is a cool gadget
Mm.
which is very easily wearable, every single one of them would start wearing this. Augmented reality, virtual reality, things that will start shaping your reality will take a toll in terms of what you actually start seeing, what you actually comprehend, what you actually perceive will change because of
Mm.
these systems.
I mean, yeah, we've kind of seen that already with social media and like smart devices, right? Like we've allowed that to creep so much into our day-to-day usage and communications that it's kind of shaped the way in which we form relationships and things like that. So yeah, absolutely. There's a bit of concern there. Is as things become more seamlessly integrated into our lifestyle, how much of this are we actually experiencing the world around us versus getting some form of subtle interference that maybe we don't notice, right? Um,
This is where we started the episode from. Like, what is a memory?
mm,
It's
yeah.
not just associated with feelings. It's about experiences that someone has. Feelings might be part of it, but it's experiences that you see, you comprehend, you perceive, and you associate it to certain things around you, and you store them inside your mind. With
Mm,
with the base level being altered, meaning with the base level of you seeing is being altered by something external of external prompting you to see it otherwise or prompting you to see what you see in a different way, that's gonna change stuff in terms of one altering memory or altering whether you have a memory at all, because you're just gonna see stuff.
Interesting. That's kind
The
of
angle that
the
I'm
that's
the
kind
angle
of the
that I'm going is
dystopian
like,
extreme.
yeah, yeah, I don't want to sound like Black Mirror-ish, but it is pretty much evident, meaning a system like Wall-E, right? Like the movie Wall-E kinds of give you a very good example where how humans will potentially be with robots doing all the activities that they want to do. And they just like incubate them in a sort of like a life vessel and then just keep hogging food and whatever.
Yeah.
That's one aspect. The second aspect of things, like I recently watched a movie called Arco, ARCO, very good movie. I recommend everyone.
Mm.
Uh, so robots and AI systems take care of all the day-to-day jobs and activities. Like they do carpentry, they take care of construction workers, they educate, they are teachers, they even go into parenting. Whereas actual parents do the work that they want to do, but stay away from children. Whereas they should be part of their
Have
childhood.
you watched a Have you watched a movie called Surrogates? It's a pretty old movie. Bruce Willis, I
Yes.
think, was
Yeah,
in
yeah.
it. Basically, all humans live within this like kind of cocoon, and a robot takes their place in the real world. I, it's kind of this weird, surreal, dystopian movie. I haven't seen it in a while, but worth a watch if you just want to dive into that kind of dystopia. My my dystopic take on this is weirdly a lot less scary, but also a lot more scary in its own way, right? I actually don't think we're going to get to a point where we're doing nothing and we're just sitting in bed and robots do everything for us,
Nah.
because
Yeah.
that would be too much convenience to the individual human, right? That only works if all humans' quality of life is basically on an equal measure of like profit, essentially, right? I suspect that there's always going to be a bit of a power slide, essentially, where it'll be there for the overall economic good of productivity would increase, but the individual human productivity may not actually increase as much as we think. So I don't think we're necessarily going to get robots that are doing the dishes and doing the folding. We might just have less energy and time for it because we're so much more quote unquote productive in our day-to-day jobs that the extra cognitive load goes towards doing even more in that field. So it's kind of more like an economic inequality kind of take on this, and how does that impact the choice in which direction we take these tools and these systems and where we improve lives. It's hard to see the incentive for a lot of these companies to come in and make like, you know, oh, there's more technology to help you out at home. Like this is exactly what they were talking about in the 50s and 60s, right? Like you have a dishwasher, you'll have a fridge, it'll take away the amount of time you need to do housework. But that hasn't actually changed across 75 years, right? The
Yeah.
amount of time and energy people take to do housework now is roughly the same, if not more, than what we did back when hardly anyone had a microwave. You might not spend the time doing the same things, but you're trying to do more now. So
Yeah.
my dystopic take is that it's not necessarily going to end up in a surrogates world where everything else is robotically operated, but it might end up in this weird world where the day-to-day quality of life hasn't improved at all, but
Yeah.
you're seeing these very drastically bipolar benefits at an economic level.
Yeah.
That's my dystopian fear, I guess.
No, no, 100%. Yeah. I think that's pretty much, I'd like to have it concluded here because that was a very good conclusion that we derived this entire episode from. And this will be our theme in terms of what we're going to continue around the series, in terms of
Yeah.
what second order effects and what sort of unrelated consequences there is from, say, A, which is a particular problem that we are facing now, a particular system that has influenced us and will be influencing us in the future. And thank you. Thank you for that wonderful conversation.
Yeah, man. It's been fun.
Here, all good. See you.